So I am an immigrant. I grew up in Canada. I have now lived in the United States longer than I did in Canada, but you'll probably still hear my accent while we're talking, especially when I say out and about. I am the author of 40 books for young readers. The most recent just came out a couple of weeks ago. It is a verse novel co-authored with Lynn Miller Lockman. It's called Moonwalking. And a couple of months before that, I had another middle grade novel come out, The Witch's Apprentice, which is book 3 in my Dragons in a Bag series. And we have just entered into the contract stage for book 5. So that will be the last book in the series. We got the cover for book 4. It looks fantastic. That comes out next January. And we just finished National Poetry Month. So I was writing a poem a day for NaPoWriMo. I have a couple of poetry books for kids and I have a couple for adults. And I think I'm going to try to maybe self-publish another one this summer. I have a history of self-publishing. When doors close in the publishing industry, which is pretty often for a writer like me, I make my own books. So I have sort of an interesting trajectory. I started out as a college professor and had worked with kids part-time for 30 years, ever since I was a teenager. And then just decided in 2014 that I was going to take the big dive and try to write full-time. And I'm blessed that I can now do that here in Chicago.
So from 2014 all the way down to 2022, you've been full-time author?
Yes, those first few years were pretty tight. But by the time I got through the first 4 years, I would say, I was doing okay and had an agent who was able to get me more deals, bigger advances. And I was making probably half or more of my income from doing school visits and conferences. That's one of the advantages of having an academic background, is that I could speak on college campuses to academics and students, library science folk, pre-service educators, but then I could also go into schools and do presentations. I was also writing for different journals and things like that. So I learned to have multiple income streams, and now I'm sort of winnowing and trying to have maybe just one or two. The pandemic helped a lot. The pandemic put a stop to my relentless travel schedule. So I was grateful for that in a strange sort of way.
Well, it cuts down on the travel, but I imagine then that also cuts down on some of the revenue that would have been coming in from those visits.
It doesn't. I thought it would. I really thought it would. When the pandemic first hit in March 2020, I panicked. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose all of this income. And then it did not take long for schools and libraries to pivot to online. And then I was completely overwhelmed. So initially I said yes to everything because I didn't know what the future was going to hold. And then by the time I got to 2021, I was like, okay, this is not sustainable. So I took the fall of 2021 off. I think from July to December, I didn't do any virtual presentations, but now I'm at a better pace. I think I'm doing probably averaging 3, maybe 4 school visits, virtual visits a month. And I'm just going back to doing in-person this month. So I had 2 book festivals coming up and a little nervous about that, but I've been vaccinated and boosted. So I'm just gonna trust that it's all gonna be okay.
What else can we do?
Right? I keep, you want to say after the pandemic, but we're still in it, and probably we'll have to take precautions for the foreseeable future. So.
Yeah, I was at a writers event Saturday. It's the first one since before the lockdown began, where it was not an official conference. It was NoCon. My friend Maurice Broadus runs MoCon here. He ran it every year up until the pandemic, then took a couple of years off. And then he didn't have the time to put on a full conference, but a lot of the usual attendees all got together, and I saw people I hadn't seen for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
He's vaccinated and boosted, so we're hugging, but turning our heads to the side. We'll go inside, and then we're outside most of the time.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I had missed being amongst writers in person.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an introvert, so I sort of feel like this is in some ways my dream life. Like I love to stay home and be alone. And I have learned that they deliver donuts here. Like I have had a lot of delivery experience over the past 2 years. But as a writer, you also do need to get out of your head, and that generally means getting out of your house. Zoom is just not the same, and Zoom can be exhausting. Whereas to be seated at a table with other people, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to Virginia and then to Gaithersburg, Maryland. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, hopefully for all of us, will become more virtual, and that you still will do the in-person events, but you'll be able to do more of the Zoom events also to cut down on your traveling, giving you more time to write. Because we're expecting you to reach at least 80 books.
Yeah. I think we're definitely going to be looking, I think the future is hybrid. I'll put it that way. I think, when I accept a conference these days, because people are booking so far ahead, they're like, we'd love to have you come in November. I'm like, I don't know what things are going to be like in November. So this is a conditional yes. And if we need to pivot and do something virtual, or, I hope you'll understand that I'm a Black middle-aged woman with asthma, and, I'm not going to take unnecessary risks. I remember hearing, I think it was Anne Pratchett talking about, they said essential travel only. And a lot of what we do as authors is not essential. Some of it is, but not all of it. The amount of school visits I was doing was just unsustainable anyway. So to have a school district now say to me, we'd like you to do 8 presentations in 1 week for our district. I'm like, so hang on, are all the students in the same district reading the same book? And they were like, yeah. I'm like, well, I think I could do like 1 presentation virtually, and then everybody could, tune in, and you can record it and keep it for a week. And yeah, we have other options. I'm not going to be doing 8 of the same presentations in one school ever again.
Fair enough. Seems like that should have been obvious before it became obvious to a lot of people, but hey, we're getting there.
There was a time I would have jumped on that. That is how I stayed afloat for several years. So it's nice to be it's a privilege to be in a position now to say, I can't do 8, I can do 1. Yeah, and still pay my rent.
So when did, and you may or may not feel this, but when did you feel that you have made it as an author, that this is going to be a sustainable source of income? This is going to be your primary occupation?
Yeah, it was only probably, I think, 3 years ago that I earned as much as I had been making as a professor. And so felt like, okay, that had been a good trade-off, that I gave up a tenure track position at a New York City community college, and, was living sort of the more flexible life that I wanted and that I needed to write. And then the Dragons in a Bag series took off. That was unexpected for me and for the publisher. It hasn't been an easy journey, and how challenging it can be to write a series. So I'm glad the series is coming to a close. But it is just sort of, it's startling, and it's instructive. It's just really interesting how you can write a book. You can have written so many books, and then it's just one particular narrative that grabs folks' attention. And next thing you know, it's part of the global read aloud, and kids are reading it in Nairobi, and kids are reading it in Alaska, and kids are reading it all over, and Random House has not sold any foreign rights. So potentially, there could be even more kids reading it in different languages in the future. We have been talking to different film production companies. We did once sell the rights and then got them back when that fell through. So the idea that this series, I call it my 401k because I no longer have a pension, but it seems as though this series is going to be the one that enables me to write a whole bunch of other things that are not commercial, but just as important to me.
Well, honestly, as shaky as retirement plans have been over the past several years, best-selling middle grade series with movie potential sounds, I would take that over a fully stocked.
Better bet in some ways, yeah, than trying to trust the stock market.